Hoo-ha! Hi everyone, Hoothany Hatano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Alan Palomo project, World of Hassle. This is a brand new album of material from Mexican-American producer, singer, songwriter, synthesizer nut, Alan Palomo, a guy who's become strangely elusive since releasing his last full-length LP in 2015, VEGA International Night School, which you would have to look up under his old stage name, Neon Indian. The squishy, lo-fi, and nostalgic production on Alan's old music inspired music fans and critics to label what he was doing an entirely new genre called chill wave, a short-lived internet music trend that you kinda had to be there for, and maybe shouldn't have even happened, as it did lead to a lot of up-and-coming artists being pigeonholed into a genre that they didn't even consciously create. But anyway, like I said, almost 10 years ago, Alan dropped the full-length album VEGA International Night School, and at that point, I felt that was the best record he had ever come out with since making a name for himself in music. It's a really creative synth-pop album with some of the best engineering and synth patches you'll hear on any record, and while it's by no means perfect, I do think it doesn't get enough discussion in retrospect. So listen to it, listen to it, listen to it, listen to it. Now, it's unfortunate Alan began to fall off the radar a little bit in the years since that album's release, though he did start to dabble a bit in acting, in soundtrack work, a Spare Neon Indian single in like 2019. It wouldn't be until this year that he would really start ramping up output again, but now has started doing it under his own name, and kicked things off in a big way with a single featuring none other than Mac DeMarco. And this song is pretty much everything that has defined Alan's music over the past decade now. The old school aesthetics, the quirky analog synth tones, sweet pop hooks as well. It is pure vintage bliss that transports you to another time and another place. Again, these are characteristics that are pretty consistent within Alan's catalog, and every time he returns with a new record, seemingly he gets better at it, which I would say is also the case for World of Hassle, a record that may be under Alan's own name, but I don't think he's ever been more in character, looking really debonair on the front cover with a new suit and sexy mustache. And many of the songs on this record are linked to stories, character portraits, vivid portrayals of a setting or place, like The Wailing Mall, which might be kind of long-winded as a spoken word piece at 5 minutes in length. It is also the first track on the record too, but I do appreciate the extra mile Alan goes on this track to paint a picture of his younger self, lost in the mall, and it becomes his world as a result, with nods to the 90s, Payless Shoes, Rainforest Cafe, and given how cinematic the sax solos and wailing lead melodies sound, I'm not surprised to hear that Alan has recently been working in film, which could also be said of the track MEUTRIÈRE, which features verses sung in French from vocalist Flora Benguigui. The whole track sounds like the theme song to a really campy, tongue-in-cheek murder mystery show set in an old Victorian house and aired on a local network affiliate in the late 80s. It is playful, it is spooky, and slightly silly too. And in the 2 tracks so far on this record, Alan has conjured these very niche and specific vintage vibes. And of course this continues deeper onto the record, whether it's the mysterious and lovesick ballads sung in Spanish La Madrileña, or the return of MILAN, where Alan is singing about a pop artist coming back into the limelight after some time away. And while there are names and dates and finer details to this story, part of me wonders if all of that was just kind of changed around for Alan to tell his own tale in music in a way. Plus, again, incredibly beautiful, old school, and detailed production on this track too. The swirling synth arpeggios, the gummy bass, the atmospheric tones soaring above it all, not to mention these theatrical little additions where, Alan is like, announcing Mickey Milan. We go from here to a very strong midpoint on the record. There's the very funny stay-at-home DJ, which is truly one for the music nerds and collectors, spinning their own records while deep in a fantasy of, I guess, exposing others to music. There are some funny nods to Talk Talk and Prefab Sprout in the lyrics as well, with calls of, go on, take the aux chord, set to these dreamy dance beats. We get another banger on the record with Club People, which is a total dance anthem, with some warm jumping bass lines and wailing saxophones. The production on this one sounds especially compressed and atmospheric, like something coming off an old cassette tape or a fuzzy AM radio band. And of course I also want to mention the sultry and moody Nobody's Woman, which is set up by this very epic rhythmic and passionate 2-minute instrumental intro, and makes for one of the most haunting ballads on the entire record. Now, closing things up, the last leg of this record I do think loses some steam. Alan does begin to paint himself into a corner a little bit with the retro 80s synth magic, and while I do respect Is There Nightlife After Death for being as starry and gorgeous and spacious and as open as it is, drift into a beautiful deep, I think the following slow burners don't have quite as much impact. Whether that be the very campy Big Night of Heartache, where Alan kind of tells a story of, I suppose, like a date gone kind of wrong, with an instrumental that sounds kind of like a soft-core porn tropical sex odyssey. Feels like the vibes and the narrative in the story are kind of taking precedent over the song, which I would say is even more so the case for the Island years. And then the entire record finishes off with a pretty anticlimactic instrumental outro, Trouble in Mind. Overall, not a bad record from Alan. In fact, I think it's quite good and right up there with Vega International Night School. Production-wise, it is immersive, it is impressive, it is movie-like, but sometimes it feels like the storytelling does kind of like suffocate the songwriting process a bit, as the tunes kind of suffer at the hand of emphasizing more a narrative or more of an old school vibe. I'm feeling a decent 2-strong 7 on this one. Tran, Zishan, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Alan Palomo, forever, forever.